brings back great memories for me. I was here 18 years, but that was 30-some years ago. Ron Fruit is the current manager, owner, and his wife is standing with him here. Ron is well known around the community and the county. He is MC for many events, and so we don't have to worry about turning it over to him and lead us on a little tour of reminiscence. And for people that don't see you normally and hear you, this may be a revelation.
Well, and we'll hope it's not just a terrible, terrible nightmare come true. You know, we've often said here that many of us have a face made for radio, and so, but we're glad to have you here. Joe, we're delighted to welcome you back and have enjoyed the friendship that we've had here at WRCO Radio for many years. And of course, many people who are watching this program have been good listeners of WRCO Radio for many years. So really, there's a lot to see, and so many people here, but we're glad to have them inside the building to be able to see. This is my wife, Beth, and we made an agreement when we bought WRCO Radio that I would be the one that talked and she would be the one that wouldn't. And out of, sincere love and respect for her, we shall maintain that agreement today, and I shall be the one who talks, and she probably will be the one who won't.
Well, Beth, is this the way it is at home, too, or do you get your words in?
Oh, I get my words in at home.
Good deal.
Well, we've talked about it. That microphone, that's my job, and she'll be happy to use an adding machine and a pencil, but microphones are mine.
You can feel lousy, but still put on a happy voice, and that's the beauty of radio. We just came in the front door, Ron, and this is the lobby, the place where people are greeted and so forth. Nice job of decorating.
Well, thank you.
I think your wife had a hand in that, too.
All of that, the hand in that, absolutely. In fact, this used to be Hala People's office many years ago. Before the addition went on. And of course, we go back to the 50s, and there have been many predecessors here, and much of the history, Joe, you know better than I, having been here and lived it.
This fall, it's 50 years, and it doesn't seem possible.
October 18th, a half century of broadcasting. And what's really fun for us is having people say, I remember where I was at and what you said on the air, not me, but what WRCO did, October 18th of 1949.
That's right.
And so for many of them, that was a very special day. And we've tried to conjure up in our mind, what would it be like to be able to turn on the radio after having been in La Crosse or Madison, to get your radio signal, to suddenly have a radio station that cared about Southwest Wisconsin and Richland Center. It must have been really a super moment in so many ways in 1949 when that happened. And so we're proud of that record of service and all the people who have come before us, and we hope many who will follow us in keeping the tradition of WRCO Radio alive.
Yeah, it's important.
And for many people, one of the trivia questions we ask young people when they begin a tour is, what does WRCO stand for? The W is an arbitrary letter that means that we're typically east of the Mississippi River. Radio stations that begin with K often are west. The other thing is that the RC stands for Richland Center, and the O for Overgard. Art Overgard from Elroy, who was a contractor, was the first owner of WRCO Radio. And those call letters have survived time. And I guess really we were lucky then in the mid-60s when the FM came on the air that WRCO FM was available, that WRCO was still something that could be chosen. So that was a plus. So a small trivia note, we've used that in Triviathon, a program we do on New Year's Eve.
Oh, yeah.
What does WRCO stand for? And there were a few that were sharp and knew and got that answer. So, but we're pleased to have people. We're looking forward to having an open house this fall and welcoming people in to see the things that they'll see as we take you on a tour today, Joe.
How large is the staff now?
We have 16 people, full and part-time. So it, in fact, is as large as the staff has been at any time in the history of WRCO Radio, or very comparable. And we're proud of the fact that not only do we have people who we feel are very capable in radio, but people who have local ties, people who grew up here. I think would be correct in saying that there would be few radio stations anywhere in the country that had so many people with a farm background. And so as we look at the influence of agriculture on Richland County, we look at our staff and how many of them grew up on the farm and have ag ties. Some still are involved in active farming. So we feel that that gives us a position to be able to serve Southwest Wisconsin better, Joe, just by being residents. This is home. This is where we've lived and where we hope to continue to live all of our lives.
We'll reminisce as you take us on the tour. Things will pop up, but do you want to start which way?
We're going to go right on inside the building, and what we tell the kids is, and I guess it's not a problem for listeners today, please ask any questions you have, and don't touch any of the switches. So I guess that applies to you and Ben, and we're going to trust you. So come on in.
Okay.
We're glad you're here.
Ron, this is very familiar. I don't think it's changed one, well, the records have changed.
The records have changed, but you might be surprised. Some of them haven't either.
Yep.
Some of the records are probably here, and we're here from the 50s, certainly, as we turn back time. And they're a part of the radio station that we never want to lose. In fact, Joe, this was really the heart and soul of the radio station, affectionately known by the employees as the record room. And the record room was where you started your shift every single day. You came in, pulled your records for that day, got ready to go on the air. It was a place where the old AP machine, the old teletype, in fact, this was the cupboard that we now simply use for storage, but it was the teletype cabinet. And it was built in because the teletype was so loud, hammering away, this dampened the sound.
And they had acoustical tile on the inside.
Acoustical tile on the inside. We'll see how we solved the problem of observing it when we go through the other way. You asked me about that. But that was where the news director then did a lot of chairing the wire and preparing information that came across the wire. And so this was a central point on the radio station for virtually everyone. And so now, not quite so much, because the records are here for once in a while play, and everything else is on computer. All of our, what used to be the wire and the teletype has been replaced by a high-speed computer printer, and we're able to access it much easier, much more quickly, and we only print what we need when we need it. So it's really made a difference. But we have saved the records. There are times when we'll never be able to get those songs again. And so they're an important part of our history and being able to share that with people.
When you spoke about the teletype, I recall the Bing 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 one was a very important story.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember opening this up and reading there, the president had been shot in Dallas. And, oh, man, I had to go on the air, and I just was shaking. I just couldn't believe it. But that was just one of the many events that a lot of people toured this station. I have to just jump in here, too, and on the back door, one winter night, Bobby Kennedy was standing out there in the snow.
I heard that story,
and,
yes.
I'm Bobby Kennedy. I'm here for Jack. Is there any chance we can get on the air? You betcha. Come on in. No hat, snow all over his head, and good memories. And Rose, the mother, was back in the big studio, and some of the others of the family. And other political figures of that time. They had to come to the small town. Television was in its infancy. Mm-hmm. Radio was key.
Well, and I think that there are many times when lesser-known names have been here, but when they came, they were a lesser name. But later in life, then,
right,
really went on to accomplish, some very major things. You're absolutely right. And it was a key. It was a way to reach people. And we really believe that's still the case. And I guess that really is our whole focus, Joe, as we look forward to a new millennium, is being able to, in a world that has so many means of communications, to be able to allow radio to still be that community voice, that opportunity for people, that that local tie. And that's where we believe community service comes in, and that's why it's really at the top of our priority list of things we want to be able to accomplish for Richland Center. But as technology changes, who knows what will happen? I mean, now we can, although I'm amazed, Joe, at some of the tapes that we still have, and we don't have a lot of them. It would, if we kept all of our program that was recorded, it would just take tons of tape, and it would be impractical. But the quality of the recordings, many of the old recordings the station had, going back to interviews with such notables as Frank Lloyd Wright, amazing quality, just amazing, that you were able to do those things and to have it sound that good. We pride ourselves in having something that sounded that good today.
Another memory I can recall was a little blue box, about yay big, like a big shoebox, that you cranked, and the spring, there was no electricity, and it was and you'd have to wind this as you were talking to somebody like this. You sound like a monkey and an organ grinder, and that worked beautifully if you kept on cranking. Otherwise, not.
So you were the Energizer Bunny yourself, right, as you went out to do an interview.
Right.
Actually, that's where we've said that a lot of our predecessors were more talented. They could chew gum, they could interview and crank at the same time, where most of us, would have trouble in that regard. So in this area now, today, the eventual plans for this room will be to use it for another studio at some point.
I see.
So that's our hope at some point, that we'll be able to remodel this room and use this. It's actually wired so that we can and be able to look at some opportunities to be able to do that.
That's good.
The room that everybody wants to see, Joe, when they take a tour, and typically young children, we've been privileged to host a number of tours particularly with school children, and we think it's important because otherwise, how do you know what's inside your radio? You know, can you visualize people? And that's the control room. And Adam Hess is on the air this afternoon, does a wonderful job for us, and we're going to introduce him and just kind of pop in and see what he's doing this afternoon. Adam, we'd like to have you say hi or use that great radio voice of yours.
Well, I'm not sure where the great radio voice went, but we'd like to say good afternoon or good evening, depending upon what time you're actually viewing this.
Well, certainly, one of the things I want people to be able to see is just what happens in the control room. Not a very big room. It was designed, this has always been the control room at WRCO Radio, to the best of my knowledge. And Adam, maybe you can just cover a couple of things that you're doing right now. If people see the clock, they can see that mid-afternoon, that you're right in the midst of your music shift today.
Well, a lot of different things going on, Ron. A lot of people listening to the radio would simply hear the radio, but that's not exactly everything that's going on behind the scenes. What you're hearing is actually our CD decks here that we play the music from, which includes a couple of 10-pack CDs, and they'll hold 10 different CDs, which give us it gives us a wide variety of music that we can select from. But at the same time, we're recording stuff from our CBS radio network, which allows us to play back what's in the news, some sports cuts and various things at a later time. And we record them on, well, it's not a new form of recording, but it hasn't exactly gotten to the general public as quickly as maybe Sony thought it would. It's called a mini disc, and what it is, it's just a miniature CD inside of a plastic case. I need to reach up here and get another song on. Exactly what this does is it allows us to record things digitally and erase and record and erase and record, and that's been a great benefit for radio stations, including ours. And we still use carts, which means I'm getting ready to play a commercial break here. So I'll load these up in our cart deck, and after this Martina McBride song is over, we'll be going to a commercial break and then playing some more music for the afternoon.
You know, one of the nice things, in fact, Joe, I think, would probably think that we just were soft and had it real easy, but Ben, I'm going to have you just take a shot and take a look at the big weather picture in the control room up on the wall. Joe will think this is great. There was a day when announcers had to walk outside in the midst of a snowstorm or a driving rain to see what we were doing. You know, we work real hard now. We observe all those numbers on that changing board and just enjoy it immensely. Notice the wind chill today is not terribly substantial at 74 degrees. No one's going to be hurt by that, but that's really nice. I mean, technology has given us the chance to do some things that we really enjoy and make our job easier.
Well, I'll tell you, Ron, one of the nicest things about that whole weather board is we can actually stay dry while looking up there. You can see the rain today, it's reading none. We haven't received any rain, but it's awfully nice in a monsoon-type downpour. We can look up there and simply say, we've received a half an inch of rain, and not have to step out of the control room and go outside and actually get drenched, so we can leave the umbrellas behind.
You know, we hate to admit that. You know, we'd like to have everyone think we're those, you know, rough, you know, blizzard-launching people, but we're
Maybe
not.
that needs to be edited out.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Adam really works a long afternoon shift, Joe. He starts at 11 o'clock in the morning, is on the board until 6. Takes over for Phil Nee. Right now we're using 3 people during the day. Phil signs on our Monday through Friday basis, works until 11, starts at 5, and then Adam works from 11 until 6, and Tammy Kilby, who we'll meet later on, then goes from 6 until midnight and finishes up the day.
You know, that's stressful. You have to be laid back and not worry about things, but it's almost out of control room. Yeah, things going on, and you have to remember this.
The hardest thing is if we change shifts. If you do your own shift regularly, then you're used to what happens.
Yeah.
But I think it's like everyone else's job. If you're used to doing what you do, it's pretty easy. But if you're doing something that somebody else regularly does, that's hard. I mean, you really have to think then. There's no instinct or no built-in habits that let you get through the day.
And this, the transmitter room.
Yes, this is the transmitter room.
One of them looks familiar.
One of them will look familiar. In fact, this is a spare. This really served WRCO Radio for many, many years. This is our FM equipment here, and we can begin with this. Our FM transmitter is remotely located. It's on Tower Hill, and if people look up and see the Cellular One antenna and the GTE tower, they'll see our antenna on that as well. This equipment, I've explained to many people, school children included, that this is kind of similar to the dash on your car. That you don't necessarily know how the fuel gauge works, but if it's on E, that means you shouldn't drive too many more miles. And so for announcers and those of us who come out and look at it, we can know exactly what the station's doing just by using these as indicators. Our engineer, Dennis Baldridge, makes a weekly visit and inspection of the equipment, keeps things tuned up, and then uses it to maximize our signal and make sure that we're in compliance with the requirements of the FCC. Our FM now is 6,000 watts. That's an upgrade. Originally, it was a 3,000 watt grant. The AM in 1949 started out at 250 watts. Later, we were able to be 1,000 watts during the day, 250 watts at night. Then subsequent to that, we were able to be 1,000 watts 24 hours a day. We currently are on 19 hours, but we could be on 24, and some point in the future that may be a practical aspect for WRCO radio. This was the original, or not the original, but this was one of the earlier AM transmitters. Served WRCO radio very well for many, many years. Subsequent, though, to that, we purchased this transmitter. This is the current AM transmitter, so when people are tuning their transmitter to WRCO FM, or AM I should say, 1450, this is the unit that's generating the signal that they're hearing. So much smaller than the previous transmitter, and its power output is created with a lot less electricity usage. Some important equipment in this rack that's immediately to the right of the AM transmitter, and one of them is one that I think people hear quite regularly talked about, and this is our EAS unit. And it doesn't look like anything special, but it is the one required piece of equipment in every radio station in the country. And the EAS is the Emergency Alert System. It is what we use to send tones, and the unit we receive tones from to alert people in case of a weather emergency. And we, at some point in the future, will be able to say to people with special receivers, this is a warning only for your area, and only receivers will go off in that area, somewhat similar to what the weather radio is now. This unit allows us to monitor other radio stations. In fact, we are assigned by the state to monitor WHHI in Highland and WOLX in Madison. We not only monitor them, but also the new Richland County weather radio, and whenever they send a certain set of tones, this unit then immediately begins to broadcast and print the information that those radio stations or that the National Weather Service is transmitting. So we immediately begin to receive that, and that's the way we stay in touch. If in fact there was an emergency of some nature, and typically it's weather, but maybe it's a civil emergency or something else, and it was required right now for all radio stations in the state to know, we would then be able to hear it right on this unit. It would immediately begin to work, and we could either put this unit on the air or relay that information to our listeners. Otherwise, we have equipment very similar to the FM that allows us to fine-tune the AM and keep track and make sure that it's in compliance, that it's working as it's supposed to, throughout the course of a broadcast day.
Boy, what's the unit behind you?
This is outdated, and it's actually just sitting here because it's taking up floor space. But we used to use all of our music on reels. In fact, we went from records, and then I think people remember when there was a time when people thought, what's going to happen? Will records still be in touch? Will we be going to CDs? Will it be cassettes? And at that time, we left our records and went to a tape music service where we, from a company, would buy tapes that were made specially for radio stations and would play on units such as this. Why did we have 4? Well, you had some backup, but we had different tapes so we could play a mixture of music, which we've always done. And so the 4 machines allowed us to do exactly that. But really, that's outmoded technology, and by the time people come, we hope on the 16th of October, as we have an open house, we'll be displaying some computers that will be the next step to play all of our commercials and all of our music, saving really, in a very basic sense, sound files on large hard drives to be able to play that and manipulate it. And so it really is the way of the future. There are many radio stations that right now are completely automated, that have nobody in the building for a good part of the weekend, and maybe a good part of the evening. They're allowing computers to do a lot of that work for them. At this point, we felt really good about having people on the air. And that's been our strategy and our focus, and will continue to be. We hope simply the computer will be a good control room tool that will allow that announcer, he or she, to be able to do a good job of playing commercials, have a better sound for our clients and a better sound for our listeners. And if we're able to accomplish that, we've done a good job of the things that we want to be able to do.
Great.
Next stop will be Studio A. We'll stop in and see what Phil is doing this morning. In fact, if people were coming here, they would be in a position where if they were going to be on the morning show, they would be coming in and visiting the studio. In fact, I think I saw Phil talking, so I'll open the door carefully and see what he's doing. Well, he's not in the midst of conversation, so come on in. Let me introduce you to Phil Nee. Phil is our program director at WRCO Radio. And in fact, from the time when I was program director, he was the first person that I ever hired And so I've assumed that we made a pretty good choice that day when he started in, what, 1986?
August 16th, 1986, actually.
A lot of people hear Phil's voice doing sports,
Oh, yeah.
signing on for us in the morning, a lot of commercials, and is responsible for a few lies and exaggerations that appear on the station every once in a while.
That's not true. I feel like I'm on 60 Minutes here.
You are.
Oh.
Yeah, that's...
Question, Phil.
Yes, Joe.
Oftentimes people say, how can somebody keep up that enthusiasm and that bright spirit when things are going wrong? You had a car accident or you had a flat tire, anything can go wrong, somebody's sick in the family, and you have to bubble up and forget about it. How do you do it?
Well, I think it's all a part of radio. I mean, I think sometimes radio is acting. Sometimes, whether or not you feel good, you have to sound good. But for me, I've never thought of it as a job. I mean, I just love what I do so much that I just love getting out and talking to people, and it's just what I do.
Well, you become part of the family. People that never dream of coming down here still say, that guy is pretty good in the morning. Cheers me up. Good peppy music, etc.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
I think
Well-
the thing that we think, Joe, that's important is that you have to be willing to laugh at yourself.
Oh, yeah.
The real things in life that happen are a lot funnier than any joke that you or I can tell. And so I think we've subscribed to that theory that, we can laugh, that people laugh with us, and once in a while it's okay if they laugh at us. And so everything from Moline stories, of which we've certainly told our share of. In fact, we've said of Minneapolis, Moline advertised as much now, not every last one of them, if Moline advertised as much now as, when it was in its heyday, that who knows, we could have had a growing force of Moline tractors in southwest Wisconsin. But we have fun with that, and it's interesting some of the comments we've had back. But we typically, whether it's Sassy, Phil's dog, whether it's cooking or whether it's Tupperware containers of mold in the refrigerator, there's nothing sacred and nobody gets a break at WRCO Radio because we disclose every embarrassing piece of information we can find on each other.
That makes good radio.
Well, we think so. We hope so.
So this unit, what can this be? You tape people here? You tape your shows ahead of time sometimes?
Oftentimes, right, we do a lot of the commercials that you hear on the radio here. We also have what is called a hybrid unit, and we do interviews from here where we can talk right in the microphone and bring the telephone right over the control board. And Ron does his morning show from back here.
This is really, and we use this for an auxiliary control room part of the time if we need to. If we need to work in the other room, that we're able to do that, and so that works out real well. I think also that we're lucky to have this studio. A lot of stations have not had a studio that was this large. And of course, you may remember much better than us, but this was where a lot of live radio occurred in WRCO's early days. And now when we think about events like the Student Council cooperation we do with Triviathon, when we've done Kiwanis Radio Days, when Brass R Us has come into the studio to play live, we've had students from the middle school band come and play. This room gives us the opportunity to be able to do that and create some of that live feeling that wouldn't exist if we were simply operating in an area where everything was automated, and we really, took that live element out of it. So it's worked out well, hasn't it, Phil? I think a lot of those have been the fun times to get people on the air. I think of the firemen's benefit auctions where we worked to raise money for the thermal imaging cameras. All of that was done in the studio, and so it gives us some possibilities to involve the community in ways that we wouldn't be able to otherwise.
I think of a Triviathon, too, as Ron mentioned, but that's a great night, and the people, the many teams that play Triviathon could see what actually goes on, and the Richland Center Student Council all at the table answering phones and people running back and forth, and we're fortunate to have a room this big that we're able to do those things.
Yeah, it's you touched my memory. There was a piano, I think it was a baby grand.
Right.
Yes.
And we'd have the live folks here, mostly church groups on Sunday. And just recently I was talking to a pastor, and she said way back there was Pastor Maurer and Richardson, Methodist, I believe. And I said, gee, I remember them. just came back like that from the 1950s. And they would come in and they would sing beautifully and all the old church music, and right in this room. And this is where a lot of the interviews were conducted too, when there was a larger group.
And that still is the case, and in fact, Bobby G. Rice is one of the most notable, the Rice family that many people remember. They spent a lot of time in this studio, and he remembers very well.
Sure. Put him up on a crate, didn't
Yeah, I
you,
think so.
He was in a bass fiddle cover. and he would pop out of it. He was 3 or 4 years old, but very small for his age. And his mom and dad were there singing, and the sister, and I can't remember her name, but there was 3 or 4 in the family that were all involved in music. Good family.
Very, very capable, and well remembered by a lot of listeners of WRCO Radio. But Bobby will talk about that when he comes back in town, when we get a chance to see him.
Yeah.
He'll remember those days standing on a box to reach a microphone at WRCO.
Yeah, he was just about yay high. Really little kid, but he belted it off.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the fun sides of radio. And I think we've had a privilege of introducing and, really people who have tried to launch music careers, but even more so, introducing a lot of people to people they knew but didn't know as well as what they thought they did. An example, Joe, would be the Relay for Life,
Oh, boy, yeah.
where people get a chance to come in and sit down and tell their stories. And those are some of the most moving moments, I think, in my radio career, is watching people talk about themselves and things in their life that have been, really, really touching. And those are special moments. Other interviews, one I think of is Jack Odell, was one of the interviews that I enjoyed doing. Jack Odell was the longtime producer of the Unshackled radio program and wound up living in the Lake Delton area and commuting into Chicago. But he had such a tremendous voice. And he came in, we were lucky. A good friend of the radio station helped us make that connection. It wasn't something that we'd ever considered possible. And Jack came in and told his story of old-time radio and told his story of Unshackled. And then at the end used the same words that he always used on the program about if your life is empty, it can be filled to overflowing, with that great Jack Odell voice.
Yeah.
And that was such a memorable moment. And some of the folk song and entertainers that we've had have been just interesting people. So in 50 years' time, Joe, going back to the time that you were here, continuing right up until today, WRCO Radio's had a real privilege to meet some super interesting people.
I agree.
It's been fun. But we're very fortunate to have good staff people like Phil.
Yeah,
He's
no,
just
that's
tremendous.
true.
And
A lot
Adam.
of good comments.
They do a wonderful job.
Despite
We're lucky.
everything.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of fun, and you got to remember who hired us here. Too.
Sign that check.
Yeah, that's right. That helps too.
But we're certainly pleased to have Phil on staff, and and most of the time I'm pleased with what he says on the air.
Well, most of it's true, but Ron gives us a lot of things to talk about. So his tractors and things like that, and you should even get out your new hat, Ron. He's got an Indiana Jones type hat that says Minneapolis Moline on it. Those are some of the things you can't see on radio, but you could see on Nova.
Yeah, good point.
Why don't you make that out?
Sadly mistimed, but a good point.
You guys don't have to leave.
Yes, we do.
Good for acoustics. Adios, thank you.
Next, we're going to stop in one of our other studios, which happens to be home right now to Tammy Kilby. Tammy is one of the newest members of our staff, working on a full-time basis, and she's our voice on Love at Night, a program that we do in the evening that features all different kinds of music and love songs. Tammy's in a studio that we use to read news in. We might do the morning show in here if we only had one guest. It has comparable equipment to the control room in Studio A, where we were at just a few minutes ago with Phil. And in fact, in the mornings, people have asked, where's Phil at and where are you at when you're talking about Molines and going back to school and great things like eating Limburger cheese and raisins and those kinds of things. I'm actually over here, and we actually look through the glass. I'm wearing a headset and can hear what Phil is saying. Phil's in the control room where we met Adam earlier, and so we talk back and forth looking through the windows wearing headsets so that we can hear what we're doing. But Tammy, we're really pleased to have her. She's another one of our people who's local and really is learning radio with WRCO and has been a very quick learner, has done a wonderful job. And I hope that she will say that she enjoys her work at WRCO Radio.
I enjoy my work at WRCO Radio.
Okay, Tammy.
And I love the Love at Night show.
What do you love about that? I mean, you really do. You really like that show.
I really like the show. It's the music. I can relate a lot to the music. I like the kind of music that I play. I don't just play it for the listeners. I play it for myself as well. And getting to know the viewers that call in regularly, it's a very beneficial. You never know too many people.
I bet you found this, Joe, and I think that Tammy's found this already, that one of the side aspects of radio that's really beneficial is getting to know people by voice. They get to know us, but we talk to a lot of people on the phone. and we know a lot more about them than you'd think. You know, when their birthday is, when their anniversary is. And don't you find that at night that you get this chance to, you know people, you wouldn't know them if you saw them on the street, but if they call, you know about their family and their...
They've made me a part of their life, and I'm there with them, and I'm not there with them at the same time. I don't know them. I wouldn't know them if they said hi to me, but I enjoy them calling. I enjoy them sharing their stories, their anniversaries, their little, you know, tidbits of things that they wish to share. It's very beneficial. It makes me feel important to let them know that at least I'm there for them, which is the real reason for the show.
Then the theme, Tammy, is the music. I mean, it sort of binds you all together.
Yeah, and it just ties it all in. Love at Night lets them relax. I'm there to kind of tuck them in, to let them know that I'm there for the evening.
That's great.
She does a great job. We're really pleased to have Tammy on staff. And I think, you know, we talk about getting on the air. Are you to the point yet where you're not nervous?
I'm not nervous, no.
That's good.
It's not a bad thing. It's, you know, sometimes it's still there, but that's the excitement in the thing. It's the excitement knowing that so-and-so's listening, and so-and-so's going to bed, and so-and-so's putting their children to bed, and so-and-so's sick. But that's just part of tying me in with them. I'm there with them. I feel that now, so it's very beneficial.
Well, she's doing a nice job.
That's
so
good.
We're really proud.
Very
Tammy's on from 6 until midnight, and Love at Night runs from 7 until midnight. And of course, it's also her job not only to do that, but she's here alone most of the time. So, you know, or with just one other person, you know, working a night shift in that setting. And so she's responsible to do a lot of things, you know, answering the phone and taking care of things. And with the beginning of high school sports this week, with school back in session, she'll be our key engineer. She's kind of the silent partner in a broadcast that comes from, be it Camp Rando, where Ithaca is going to play, or Elroy, where Richland Center will be involved in a ball game. It's her job to make sure that all of those technical connections are made right, all of our commercials are played at the right time. So you're not hearing her and you're not seeing her, but she's a very integral part of what we're doing with the ball game. So.
Did you know you were that important?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We tell her. We try to remind her.
All know that we're very important.
Tammy, it's nice to see you, and I'm sure it's nice for people to see you.
It's, yeah, probably the first time they get to see you.
Yeah.
Put the face with the voice.
Thanks, Tammy.
You betcha.
Thank you.
Going to stop next and visit with Stacy Kleist. Stacy's voice is heard on the station reading news, and really that's her primary focus and job here at WRCO Radio. And she's been with us since 96?
96.
The fall of 96, so she's coming up on an anniversary and has done just a super job. I think one of the things, Joe, that, and of course you can identify very well with Stacy, because news was
Here at the
your
city
heart and
council
soul.
all the time.
You bet.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she does a lot of those meetings, whether it's school board, city council, county board, but also the importance that a local radio station has and its responsibility to serve the community, I think, is bore out in news.
It's true.
That's the most critical aspect of what we do is news. And so we're really proud to have Stacy on staff. And I think she probably would tell you that there are good days in news and there are bad days in news. And sometimes it's not always because of the story you get. Sometimes, I mean, isn't that true that there are good days and there are bad days, you know, that have nothing really to do with the job? That's just the way the job works.
There's days that go smoother than other days, depending on how much you have, when your deadlines are falling.
It's rewarding, though,
The
isn't it?
pressure is different days, but it is very rewarding, and it's very driving, I think. It's a real challenge some days, and that's good. It's a positive kind of challenge.
Stacy and I actually work together quite often because I will start in the morning and do the morning news, and then she takes over when she comes in at 8 o'clock where I've left off. But she's responsible to go and visit, you know, city offices and county offices, the police and sheriff's departments on a daily basis or every other day basis, depending upon the office and the schedule of the people that are there. But I think Stacy would agree with me. News can be really rewarding to be able to do a story that really helps people. But I think there are also those days where we feel the pain of people who have had an accident, have had a disaster. You know, if you're reading the obituaries, which are an important part of what we do at WRCO Radio, they always have been, and they always will be, given our current means of communication in our community. I mean, I think some days don't you empathize? I mean, sometimes doing news can be real discouraging, but I think we've tried hard to also do the stories that are positive, for our own benefit, but also the benefit of people who listen.
I think because there's always both things going on. As you say, there's tragedy, but there's also very positive things that are that are going on in the community and positive things that affect everyone. And it's really rewarding to report on those things. And it's hard sometimes to report on things that aren't so happy and things that are more tragedy, especially if they're people that you know. And the chance of that happening in this community is pretty great, having grown up here.
Yeah, you do know a lot of people. And it's
You
just
do.
a reflection of life, isn't it? The good and the bad and different.
We talked about the teletype. I'd like to have Stacy just kind of punch up. There's some aspects that we can do, and it's not a lot different than what people can use on their own home computer, quite frankly. This computer is fed by satellite, so it updates a lot faster than what an internet connection would. But a lot of the information is really nice for us, just to be able to see and look at radar and be able to see where range towers are at. But we can look at different things and see some regional radar. Right there you can see that if you can find Richland County, depending on how steady Ben is with that camera, zooming right in there on where we live and where we work and so forth. No precipitation there this afternoon. Weather is probably the hardest thing, Joe. If we'd have chose to be a meteorologist, you know, that's the old line that you can be wrong most of the time and still keep your job. Their job isn't an easy one, and we have really sources of the National Weather Service here on this machine, which also now is our modern-day teletype. This is simply a computer that takes downloaded information, and this is our wire. This is where we receive AP material. We also receive our state network wire on this. We also get a lot of our sports, all of our weather information, except the relationship we have with the Channel 3, News 3 meteorologists in Madison, who regularly call us with forecasts and do those. But Stacy, in fact, just demonstrate, if you would, for a second, Stacy, how you'd pull up a newscast coming up where we're able to pull wire or some of our state news off. That automatically downloads from the satellite, and then she can just simply turn it off whenever she wants and have a complete newscast. In your day, and my day early, if you ran out of paper, you ran out of news.
Because if the garbles on you, that should be a rip.
And so, things have come a long ways. It's much nicer.
And if you print it out, you take that in the newsroom.
Yep, print it out and take it in the newsroom, make decisions with that. That is all state-based news. Everything that's local, of course, we bring ourselves, and that's the computer that Stacy's sitting in front. In fact, we don't know how we get along without it. We look at guys like you, Joe, and we say, how did you do it?
It was easy.
And the real truth, the real story?
No, it was difficult.
It was difficult. And, you know, I think there's something that we need to say in today's modern age with all the technology we have, is you look at people like you who I think did a great job with local news. And my father would always say, be quiet, Joe is reading the news, because WRCO is what we always listened to when I was a kid. Joe is on with the news, I wanted quiet. And of course, Tim Moxness, whom you remember, the predecessor of yours, I had him for a 7th grade science teacher, in fact. So I knew him. I just couldn't make the connection between Johnny Martin on the air and Mr. Moxness in the classroom until he then became news director and started using his real name. But looking at the tools that you had and the quality of product that you generated, the Walter Cronkites of your generation, who really were responsible journalists, prepared tremendous newscasts, and gained the respect of the entire country. Did that with a typewriter and a telephone, or maybe just a journalist pad. Look at all the equipment we have today. We, in many ways, are having a hard time holding a candle to the people who had less equipment. So, in essence, it's not equipment that makes good radio, Joe. It's a good heart and a desire to serve people. And I hope that that's what we can be remembered for by those who will come after us, that we're not so enamored in equipment that we forget that it's people we serve, and it's people that make equipment go.
For Stacy's benefit, we know that it all looks great here, but to get the local news, you have to know how to write it up and cover it and deliver it.
And gain people's trust.
Yep.
And so that's one of the reasons we're proud of Stacy, is because we believe that people do trust her implicitly, and they know how hard she works to try to get information accurate and on time and to get it right. So that's important.
Stacy, don't blush.
We're lucky. She's another one of our... In fact, of course, she graduated from the University of Wisconsin with a journalism degree, has a strong ag background, so we're delighted to have her.
She was out to campus, too.
Yeah, got that good start at the University of Wisconsin-Richland, like so many of us did.
You bet.
Excellent. Good. Thanks, Stacy. Next, we'll go and meet Norma Frank. Many people don't know who Norma Frank is, but if we mention the fact that she was Vanna, they would right away. Now, I'm not sure whether she's really talking on the phone at this moment or she just decided this would be a good time to take a phone call because Ben and Joe are here with the camera. There's a good chance that she just really... Well, she is on the phone. I'm embarrassing her. But it's not the first time that we've embarrassed her, and it won't be the last either. She does a tremendous job and really works hard. She's kind of the heart and soul of the radio station in so many ways. In the traffic department, and we ask kids when we do things, and College for Kids, Joe will say, you know, do you think what the traffic department is at the radio station, you know, is that where we have our helicopter like all the big stations do in the city? But in essence, it's where we put together all of our commercial orders and all of our programming, and it's Norma's job to turn all of that into a product that we can use and get on the air every single day. You really did have a phone call?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
It was a very important call, Ron. We're told not to joke around when we're on the phone, but then the boss does it.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's in his blood.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Norma, getting this together is a big job, but it has to be easy, otherwise you just give up. I mean, all these loose ends make it all come together. Isn't that right?
Well, yeah.
That's what-
Although I don't know if it's easy. I think it's hard.
It's
I think
not
she
easy.
just makes it easy.
Yeah, you have
It
to.
just takes a lot of organization.
Yeah.
You gotta keep
Otherwise-
everything separated and organized, otherwise you will go crazy.
Yeah.
And you still forget things, but...
She cusses her computer once in a while, but,
Yeah.
you know, I mean...
But I don't know what I'd do without it at this point. When I first started here, it was in '70, and this is just day and night right now. I mean, I wouldn't go back to those days for anything.
No, that's true.
Everything was wrote on by hand practically, or typed on a typewriter. It would have taken me days to get things done that I do in a matter of hours now.
In fact, you know, I think oftentimes people wonder about billing. How do we bill? You know, what do we keep track of? When we were in the control room with Adam, maybe people had a chance to see a piece of paper that he was working with. But a salesperson goes out and sales the airtime, brings that order back to Norma. And then, of course, they have to determine what time of day that's going to run, and that's a part of the sale. You know, do you want these in prime time? Do you want love at night spots when Tammy's on, or do you want them in the news when Stacy's on, whatever? But Norma enters all that information in the computer, and really it manages that data then to be able to correctly place that commercial order so that it gets on the air at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have to verify to our clients that that commercial did play, and that's where the computer makes a big difference. And in areas of what we call co-op advertising, where vendors provide advertising dollar support for merchants, we have to verify that for them. And so we send an invoice that tells the time that that commercial ran. That'd be very difficult and time-consuming without the computers.
Oh, yeah.
We used to do it, but in 1999, more people are requesting that. We can provide more information and do it much more quickly. The day will come, as we talked about putting computers in the control room and putting computers elsewhere, that they will all talk. We have a network that we use now, but we'll expand that network so that the computer that Norma uses to generate the commercial schedule and program schedule for that day will actually then go right straight to the control room, where we may get to the point where we have a paperless control room. There are radio stations that have done that for a long time. We haven't, but that will become a reality at some point in the future, to be able to say, okay, let this computer download today's log and be ready to go.
Great.
So it's enjoyable. But Norma has been with us a good number of years.
Well, 14 years the second time around. I was here 3 years earlier in the 70s, but then I came back in '85. I've been here ever since.
And people say, why do you call her Vanna? You want to tell that story?
No, it's just silly. It was some crazy time when they were drawing a name, and Phil was working then. We went back it was on a Friday, and I come dressed down in jeans and a sweater, and I walked in the back room. Phil goes, "Oh, here comes Vanna in her sequin gown." Been there ever since.
Vanna, not the sequin
No,
gown.
not this. I never did wear the sequin gown, but I've been Vanna ever since.
But the beauty of radio is we could
Done.
say she was wearing a sequin gown, and people immediately had this vision of Vanna White in her sequin gown, turning letters, you know, drawing out people's
Now
names.
everybody's really disappointed. They find out who I really am.
But people do come in and say, who's Vanna?
Yeah.
They
They
wonder
even come
about
up to me and ask me, who is Vanna? And I'm embarrassed to tell them it's me because it's just such a silly thing.
Good story.
But it's fun. It's fun. And it has stuff.
Yes, for probably 13 years now, because I think it started right after Phil started, and he's a year behind me as far as the second time.
So in fact, we've even wondered if, you know, Phil really knows Norma's first name. Because I don't think he ever
I don't
calls
think
you
he ever
Norma.
called, no.
It's always Vanna.
Yeah.
You know, and we've often joked about this too, but WKRP in Cincinnati, you remember that show, don't you? Whoever wrote that script had a real solid background in radio.
Oh, I think so.
Because it's somewhat believable. And, yeah, might we say, we all have our idols at WRCO. But somebody really had a handle on radio when they wrote the script for WKRP.
That's right.
I mean, it's a fun place to be, and as Phil said earlier, you know, it is kind of a show business in a way, entertaining and so forth, and so we've got to have those days. We work in a close environment and work very closely together, and so I think the ability to laugh and do that works out well. But let's introduce you now to Al Hushka and Alice Schulte. Al is a voice that, yeah, a strong background in radio, and we've had Al's presence here for the better part of 20 years. And Alice started with WRCO Radio in early 1995, actually came on board in late 1994. So we have just two outstanding salespeople here, and we have three really wonderful salespeople. Mary Jennings is not able to be here today and would like to have been, but something came up beyond her control. But Alice is our sales manager, and Al is one of our account representatives, but also commercials. Al, if you just say good evening or something, everyone's going to recognize that great voice of yours.
Hi, everyone.
But he's done a lot. They really have a job where they're not heard on the air quite so much, and sometimes people may not be quite so familiar. But when it comes to our clients, these are the familiar faces and voices of WRCO Radio, because you go out and they regularly visit with people, work to meet their challenges and needs in advertising. And Alice, I think you find it rewarding. I mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot and the pressure, and you're going to say that it is anyway, but I believe that it is, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is, because I like people, and you're in the wrong job if you don't like people. Because you learn all aspects of them. You learn about their business, and plus you learn about their personal lives, and that's rewarding.
The other thing is, of course, you get involved in a lot of other activities, working with the Chamber and Main Street, which the radio station needs to be a partner in, along with other forms of media in the community. And I mean, I think that gives you another way to work side by side a lot of those people in the community.
I'm on the Main Street Chamber Partnership Board, and I'm also in Rotary Club, so I work with a lot of businesses on a more personal level, and that's fun too.
Alice came from an interesting background in radio sales, too. I think a lot of us, most of us have started at WRCO Radio and have been here. This has been our radio home where we learned and where we've continued to learn and grow. But Alice, you started in a unique situation that was a commercial Christian station that had a number of translators all over the state of Minnesota, practically.
We worked in 200-mile radius, and it was the only radio station that I've ever, that started from the ground up. It was a brand new station, so I was out calling on clients, introducing something that had never existed in that area before. And everybody said, who in the world would want to advertise on Christian radio? So I had to learn the hard knocks the hard way, and so prior to that, I'd also been in my own family business, so I've seen all aspects of this. I've sat on the other side of the desk having radio people coming in talking to me. And so that's made my transition into radio that much easier.
And we were just lucky that there's this fire chief at Hill Point that became the apple of her eye, and that's what brought her from Minnesota to southwest Wisconsin. And so we've been fortunate to have her as a part of our staff ever since. So
I got married, I think, 6 months prior to my coming down here. I should say remarried. I have 5 children. I left all but one of them in Minnesota. One of them lives in La Crosse, and that's been an interesting transition of going from being in a business of our own, going into, now I'm on the dairy farm, so now I've had to learn how to milk cows. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I grew up on a farm, and now I'm back on the farm.
Well, Al, your roots go back to the farm, too. I mean, we've talked about how many of our employees here have a farm background, but you're a southwest Wisconsin born and raised gentleman as well.
This is home, and born and raised in WRCO, and I've worked in radio really all my life here in southwest Wisconsin, so it's a great place to be, great place to work. So
first time your voice debuted was where?
At 1967 at WISV in WRCO, and then from there, my wife and I were married in 1968, and we moved to Prairie du Chien. I worked 10 years there at WPRE before coming over to here. So been here for 20 years now. So it doesn't seem possible.
But you didn't start in sales. In fact, sales was something you had never done before WRCO,
Right.
and you've been here a good number
Right.
of years first.
When I first started here, I was on the air in the morning, and then they had the opportunity, I guess that was about 1979. I had the opportunity in 1981 to go into sales. I started out in part-time and then had the opportunity to go full-time, and been doing that ever since. And I agree with Alice. I really enjoy it. It's nice to meeting people and working for people and helping people is really a really enjoyable job. So I enjoy it.
But if I told you you couldn't go into the production studio and you couldn't do any more commercials, you'd be disappointed.
I would be very disappointed. I really do enjoy that part of my job. In fact, I think probably that's as much as anything. I really enjoy the production, and I like to see what I can do back there and hear the product when it's done, and really enjoy that part of it. So it's
super.
It's very, very enjoyable. So, and it's a fun place to work here. We have a lot of laughs. So.
And I think, you know, the other thing about, I'd like to say just a couple of things, if I might, about Mary Jennings. Mary really has been in retail a lot of her life. So we bring some interesting perspectives, you know, from people who've worked in our sales department. But people will remember Mary. She did her own radio commercials and worked with Al when she owned Mr. Appliance in Muscadet. Was right down on Main Street, of course, and worked with her son, Bob, of course. And her husband, Ray, worked for the Wisconsin Gas Company for many years. So Mary was a radio advertiser, and at such time they decided to sell their business, came and started then selling advertising to others, and has done a tremendous job, and I think really empathizes well with the merchant who's on the side, like Alice talked about being the other side of the desk, to come back and actually do commercials for other people. And so she's another one of the voices that people hear on the air, and she's done a wonderful job in a career change that has some similarities but required her to learn a lot of new things along the way as well. And Mary's been with us, should have went and looked back at my records, but a good number of time.
7 years.
5 to 7 or 8 years, yeah. So she's really been a nice addition to our staff here and providing that kind of touch. So it's been a big plus. So we've got a great sales department, and we're really proud of them, and they do a really, really nice job for us.
Good for you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, I just think it was a terrible shock, Alice, when you came from a Christian environment here.
No, it wasn't. That was the nice part. Everybody up there asked me, too, how does that work? Well, Ron does a lot of lay speaking in his own congregation, so no, it's been a real
Bring it right into
easy
society.
transition.
Smart remark. Congratulations. You're still on the cutting edge, Joe. Way to go. Just want to put a set of headphones on you and put you in a studio.
Oh, heck. No thanks for it.
I think we'd love to have you sometime. Absolutely. But that really is the core tour of the station. This is Phil's office here, where he's able to do some sports reports here, and but otherwise we don't have a lot of space in terms of our building and where we're at. The important thing we have is what people can't see, and that's the voice and the ability to communicate on the air. And our goal in the future is to continue to be a partner in the community. I think we're proud of the associations that we have with Star Spangled Celebration, the Relay for Life, the Thermal Imaging Camera Fund Drives. I mean, those are the things that, you know, really count for a lot of things. And if there is a niche, we hope it is that we don't have one. That we're a little bit of everything to all people who listen to the radio station. And so it'd be nice if Ray Schrader was here. I mean, people have reminisced with Ray for years. Done a tremendous job with music on Saturdays. I mean, he's been a fixture and a mainstay of WRCO weekend programming for a long time. And then I have a son, Greg, who does some part-time work with us. Dan DiFilippo, goes by Danny D on the air, but has done a nice job with us. Bill Twining and Dave Turk still come back and help us do a variety of things. And hopefully I'm not leaving anybody out, but Todd Albaugh, of course, our Chamber Main Street director, even comes in and helps us from time to time doing those. Bob Cole, who recently left WRCO Radio and secured employment with the Wisconsin State Journal, still comes back and helps us with some weekends. So we have a good number of people who have, you know, really helped us grow and get the work done that we need to. One person we didn't get a chance to meet today is Joanne Krulotz. A lot of people know Joanne. Joanne works on the air for us, and also Joe is a receptionist and a secretary here at WRCO Radio at the same time. So it's really been wonderful to have the support of Southwest Wisconsin and to be able to call Richland Center home, and I hope that we can do that for many more years, and that when people look back, they will have kind words and kind memories of what WRCO Radio contributed to the Richland community when it's time for us to pass the torch to the next generation.
Ron, Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. I
Well-
don't say another 50 years because you want to be retired by then.
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. But I hope that there's a WRCO radio that's here serving the community, 50 years from now, long after you and I are gone. Thanks for coming. We're delighted in having you.
Thank you.
WRCO Nears an Anniversary is brought to you by the Goplin Agency, the insurance people, and by the City of Richland Center. Thank you, Goplin Agency and Richland Center.
The Richland Medical Center, Family and General Practice, Internal Medicine, Surgery, and other specialties. Phone 647-6